Bobby Torres of Frightbox Recording here to share with you 3 actionable tips on how to achieve a tight, clear, and punchy low end within your metal production. First of all, I'd like to shout out Jimmy Judas Beer Brand for requesting this video. Thank you for asking me because low end management is something that's extremely tricky, especially within metal productions, mainly because things are so busy, there's so much going on, and everything's fighting for that low end. So hopefully you find these tips helpful. So tip number 1, high pass everything within your mix. Now, obviously you do not want to high pass everything at the same cutoff frequency. You want specific instruments to live in the super duper subs, then certain instruments to live in the low end, and then so on and so forth. Okay, so I have one of my mixes pulled up here, and I'm gonna run through each of my EQs to show you the cutoff frequency of all of my high pass filters. So first I have some strings, and if you see here, now typically I would have strings sitting after guitars, so I'm OCD and I prefer to have all of my drums first, particularly my kick, snare, toms, cymbals, then my bass, then my guitars, then my vocals, and then all of my extra stuff like strings, synths, and so forth. In this mix I have strings first, I think because I had a lot of string tracks happening. But anyway, I digress. So if you look here, my strings are high passed. Everything below 130 hertz is gone, high passed. Okay, so here's my kick drum EQ. Everything below 35 hertz is rolled off. Now, most people wouldn't even think to roll off the lows on your kick, but everything below 35 hertz is really just junk frequency. That is not adding anything musical to your kick drum sound. It's super duper 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 subby and takes up a lot of headroom, which can be a problem when you are trying to get your mix loud. So yes, so everything below 35 hertz is gone on my kick. Okay, and everything below 122 hertz is high passed on my snare. Okay, and toms, pretty much everything below 60 hertz is rolled off. Cymbals, everything below around 300 hertz is rolled off. Bass guitar, everything below 60 hertz is rolled off. And my guitars, everything below 80 hertz is rolled off. And with vocals, there are no vocals in this particular mix, but with vocals, I typically roll off everything below 100 hertz. So the way I approach it is my kick sits the lowest, then my bass, and then my guitar, snare, and everything else kind of sits above that. I think of it kind of like a layered cake, because in reality, only a few instruments can sit in that super duper subby range. There's not really a lot of room down there since the subs eat up so much headroom. So tip number 2, get your bass guitar sitting evenly within your mix. And the way that I achieve this is through dual compression. And what I mean by dual compression is I do not have one compressor working too hard. The way I do it is I have one compressor, right? That's compressing lightly, and I follow it up with an EQ. And then post EQ, I have a second compressor. So the way this works is that both compressors are working, but they're not working as hard as if I tried to get just as much compression out of a single compressor. And if your bass guitar is moving too much within your metal production, it'll give your mix this weird, lumpy, uneven sound. Now, the source has to be good. You should be using a bass that has a nice, even frequency response. Once in a while, I'll get players in the studio where their basses will have this weird hump at 100 hertz, or the bass will have no low end, or the bass will have too much low end. So I'm extremely picky with the bass itself. And new strings have a lot to do with the sound as well. So yes, I dual compress my bass, and actually I'm gonna play the track back and let's look at how much each compressor is working. Okay, so this is my first compressor. As you could tell, it's barely kissing the bass sound. It's pretty much compressing around, I don't know, 2 dB? Yeah, around 2 dB. And then the second compressor is compressing a little more heavily, so let's check this out. Yeah, so as you can tell, the second compressor is compressing around 3 dB. So in total, I have 5 dB of compression going on, but it's way more transparent than if I had one compressor compressing 5 dB. Again, the reason why is they're both reacting to the signal independently, and the resulting bass sound is way more transparent. Okay, and tip number 3, the playing needs to be tight. You can go crazy high passing all of your instruments and making sure your bass is super duper consistent, but if the 2 guitar tracks are off from one another, or the bass is ahead of the kick drum and so on and so forth, the low end will never appear to be tight and punchy. As a matter of fact, I found that I could pull up a mix if it was recorded really well and all the instruments are really locked in. That the low end almost kind of feels tight already, even without doing anything. And it all comes down to the performance. And if the performance isn't there, then the playing needs to be edited. Now, I know again on the internet, you know, everyone is anti-editing, but the reality is most of the metal records produced within the past 20 years are edited to death. Whether you like it or not, this is the reality of the situation. And that's just because things have to sound good. It's that simple. So if you look here, here's my kick drum. If you notice, my bass guitar, nothing is ahead of the kick. Here are the bass transients, right? The bass guitar transients. The guitars are super duper tight. Nothing is ahead, nothing is behind. Everything is, it's not super duper gent machine tight, but it's pocketed. So the mix feels right. The low end feels right even without having to do anything. So there you go, my 3 main tips. Number 1, high pass everything. Number 2, double compress your bass so you have a nice even bass signal that's nice and transparent. And make sure that the playing is locked in and tight. Do not gloss over the performance element. One mistake a lot of newbies make, including myself, I spent years doing it like this, where I would rush through the recording and think the magic was in the mix, but in reality, your mix really starts on recording day. Believe me, the performance and editing is a huge part of the sound of metal production. Okay, so if you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. Be sure to click the little bell icon in order to be notified every time I upload one of my weekly videos on all things metal and rock productions. Be sure to both like and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links are in the description. And don't forget to download my quick EQ guide that contains all of my EQ settings that I always refer back to when starting a mix. There is a link in the description as well. Until next time, happy mixing.